And I love your story because it is very different and unique. Rather than developer to CTO, you went architect, like actual, like building architect to CTO.
Exactly.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I realized pretty quickly that most architects, when you start at university, you want to become a Starchitect, so a star architect. And there are people like, Rienzo Piano, Frank Lloyd Wright,
Yeah.
Frank Gehry, all of these guys. And I realized pretty quickly that I was never going to be one of those type of architects. So when you come into an architectural office, you either go to the right-hand side or to the left-hand side. So the right-hand side being, the guys that are very artistic, that do all of the designs on their napkins, and they give it to us on the left-hand side. So the kind of technical guys that go on to all of the construction drawings and do all of the documentation. And I found that whole process was extremely cumbersome. So when I was at university, we did everything by hand. So everything was done by hand. And then there was, I wouldn't say it was a digitization of the drawing board, it was more of a computerization of the drawing board. And that's been one of the biggest challenges for our industry as well, because it wasn't a true digitization. So basically what Autodesk did, which is one of the, I think they are the biggest developer of CAD software in the world. They took the drawing board and they computerized it. And it meant, there were some, benefits of that. You could do changes quickly and, you could reiterate, a lot more quickly, but it was very cumbersome. So they actually came out, I think it was around, it was the first version of AutoCAD where they had a programming language called AutoLisp, which is based on Lisp. And I was, really interested in doing it and started learning it. And that's kind of where, the whole programming kind of thing came into it. And then I was, I was here, I was working as an architect here in Sweden for 15 years, as consulting, and kind of started getting introduced to something called Python, which was, really cool. Then I could start automating a lot more. It was a lot more powerful. And then I started, hearing about this thing that was called web development that I didn't have a lot of knowledge about, and saw that Python fitted really well with that. The guy who founded BIM Object, he's a really good friend of mine. He gave me my first job after 2 weeks, moving to Sweden. He said to me, you have to come and work for me. And I was like, at that stage, he was doing a lot of 3D stuff. He had a game development company as well. So he's kind of been all over the place. And he was the one that introduced me to ArchiCAD and this whole, GDL programming language and all that sort of stuff that really got me interested in development. So, web development for me was totally foreign when we started up BIM Object. It's been a huge learning curve for me. It's been one of the biggest challenges for me in my life. But I've learned so much over the last 7 years. It's been an interesting journey. It continues to be an interesting journey and will continue to be an interesting journey. There's a lot of challenges, not coming from a developer background, not having that traditional, computer engineering, computer science type of education. So yeah, I've learned on the job. I was thrown into the flames and I'm loving it. I'm loving every day of it. So for me, this is not a job. This is a lifestyle and this is a way of life for me, which is, I think I can pretty much speak for, the whole management team at BIM Object. This is kind of more of a lifestyle for us rather than a job.